Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. I want to talk a little bit more about what I was talking about yesterday. This is going to be the introduction to the 200th and 11th edition of the Journey series. It's a lot of Journey series entries, and also to whatever video I'm making today on Thursday, August 21st. So, this thing to do with my son moving out, and you have these completion of something, right? It's like a completion of, we have chicks right now, and they are in the outdoor coop. So we had them inside a big plastic bin that we've made into a chicken brooder. And we have them inside the house for about a week or so. Then we put them in our greenhouse in the night, and it's kind of hot in there, so it's good. But like chicks have to stay hot. They have to stay at like an 80 degree, 90 degree climate for the first period of time, where they would spend their their formative their baby years underneath their mother's wings a lot of the time, next to their mother's body. They would get warmth, so you have one of these heat lamps, and so the heat lamp is key to keeping them, something like they have to be 95 degrees the first week, 90 degrees the second week. It goes down by 5 degrees each week. And then we put them outside in the we have one of these chicken playpen kind of things that they can scratch and eat grass and things. And then we move them to the coop, and then we let them out to free range. It's about 3 to 4 weeks in, and then we just got to keep the dogs away from them, or one dog away from them, Tulsi. And then we're training them to go in and out of the coop, and they just naturally become chickens. And then pretty soon they're just free-ranging chickens that are going in and out of the coop when they're supposed to. And in the morning and the night they come out in the morning and go back in at night before it closes the automatic door. And then now they're just out there being chickens, and we feed them whatever. We keep them fed and make sure they have water, and that's about it, right? So, but there's raising something to adulthood. You do it with train a puppy and these things, and then, of course, with kids, it takes a lot longer. 20-year period that they go through these various stages of their life, and then eventually they go out on their own, right? And you have these things in life. You have to check off these boxes, which I'll go through in a moment. What I was realizing last night, that I am, not in a sense bummed about it. It's not like a negative thing. It's just what it is. But I'm involved in multiple failing ventures, right? Like my YouTube channel is dying, right? My YouTube channel is, going the opposite way that it should, and there's nothing I can do about it because of the algorithms, right? I mean, there's things I could do about it, but none of those things are things I at least for now, there's no feasible thing I can do about it to stop it. Like I have to bring in more people, and it just isn't happening because, how YouTube structures its algorithms, and its, all of its policies and whatever. The Gratefulness meditation is also going in a south direction. The individual sitting video for yesterday, Tuesday, got 46 views. And they used to get some hundreds of views, so there's less people partaking of the individual sittings and getting the transmission and these things. And that is, similarly, whatever it was at its peak. And then the whole thing with Sahaj Marg, the gratefulness thing is a subset of Sahaj Marg with the dying system under Daji that has failed, which is, a really sad thing, and whatever that is. Where things are shrinking, right? Where things are going in the wrong direction. They're contracting. And, just where you're either expanding something or it's shrinking, right? It's getting smaller. And so, and I was thinking about that, like last night. That's the path forward. And of course, our system is imploding, like the system, whatever it's doing, and people are going in the wrong direction, and you really can't help them with that. And to whatever extent, when I first took my initial Sahaj Marg sittings, you get these free introductory meditative sittings, and I had such a profound experience, and I was so excited. And I said to my preceptor, "Wow, does everybody know about this?" Because I knew it was like an amazing thing. And I was like, "You got to tell everyone about this." And I was, had so much enthusiasm, and I started telling people about it, and they all looked at me like I was, I mean, the system is, people don't want to meditate, and people don't want to hear about God, and people who knew me thought it was weird. My brother thought I had joined some sort of a cult, and he ended up joining because of that. At least that's his story, and you never know with him. He's always exaggerating or whatever it is, but that's what he says. And that's a possibility. I mean, that's like at least something. I mean, I don't think he would have whatever. He might have at least thought that. At least that was something he thought. But either way, people didn't want to hear about it, and so I've always felt like it's my duty to tell people about it. And now I don't care what people do with it. Like I used to be bummed out, when I talked to people about it, they wouldn't do it, or when they would do it and they quit, and or wouldn't do it well. And now I'm like, it's just my obligation and my assignment, whatever, to talk about it because, it's the solution. I mean, it is the solution to the problem of human life right now. And, you know, um, you have these things that you have material tasks and you have a spiritual life that you have to accomplish in life. You have these things, right? So early on in life, you learn to walk and talk and eat and feed yourself and go to the bathroom not in a diaper and like these these big milestones, like incredible milestones, things that you're going to do the rest of your life, right? How much do you walk every day? How much do you talk every day? How much do you interact? All the things that you do that you that are a part of your everyday life. And so you have to. I mean, you see this in with if you're watching a fawn or like a baby cow, they have to get up and be on their feet within a short period of time. Like they're no lollygagging. They have to be able to move because their mom just can't sit there in one spot for days upon days nursing it, like in some animals where their eyes are closed like puppies and rabbits and they can't walk, they can't see, they can't, they're just buried in some den. And the moms come back and forth until the thing, the kangaroo in its pouch, right? But they at some point the creature has to be up and walking around, and then there's communication, and with kids, like we have more complex milestones than other animals, until we're ready to be off on our own. There's a time when we move out. Some of that is in college, like if you go to college where you're still kind of connected to your parents' home, but you're also living out on your own. And you get used to doing things on your own, and then you go back to your parents' house, and you're like, wow, I don't like being here anymore. I like to make my own decisions and things, and so you have to leave, and and it's a harder thing now because kids are so addicted to the internet and just disconnected from their family life, and they don't, go out and seek something in the real world. But there's a moment where you leave the nest, right? And so you have these things that have to happen. Like you have to, I mean, maybe you don't do some of these things, but it's part of human life, right? There's these milestones. You meet somebody, you get married, you have kids, get some sort of career, you get educated, you get trained to do some kind of a job, you participate in society in some way. You do a job, you have a family, and whatever else is like whatever your other things are, some specific things, your accomplishments, right? Then you raise your kids, and then the kids go out in their own into the world, and they participate and contribute in whatever job you did with them, and whatever they became, and they function, become part of society. And then there's spiritual life, which is kind of optional now, but it's really not optional at all. It's something that everyone's supposed to have, and it's more important than anything else because it's, you have these things, these milestones of the physical life that are a part of, the proliferation of your species. Making sure that there's more people when you have kids and those things that you have, with your life, and then your relationships with other people and what you do with the world, the footprint you have, whether you make the world a better place or worse place, and these things. Right? You learn how to cook and you find whatever ways that you get fed and whatever ways that, the hygiene and the way that you clean your place and do daily tasks and things like this. And when you get into your 50s, 40s, 50s, you start realizing death is there for you. And people don't think about death enough. Not in a bad way, being obsessed with it or whatever it is. But people don't think about death enough. And, I have this video series about what would happen if I, died. Like, I made a video for, in case I'm dead, people could listen to it. I have no idea what I put in there. But I have some other, it's a playlist. And I also have Preparing for Death on my Gratefulness meditation, so I'll put this up as a separate audio and put that in both of those playlists. I'll put this whole video in the playlist on the Positive Future. But one playlist is on Positive Future, the other's on Gratefulness meditation. But either way, that's, this will be in there. But, at some point, I think it was, I was running, and I talk about this, and I'm running, and I'm like, boy, I'm slow, and I'm running like an old fat guy, and I'm like, oh, shit. Like I just realized I never really thought of myself as getting older. Like it was just happened day by day, right? And there's things that I don't do as well and whatever, but I was stressed out a lot going through the divorce in India and these things that's when I kind of got old. I put on some weight and I got old and like it just didn't register because I was just so focused on everything else. My kids and like the stress and all these things. We were in a bad situation in India, and having to reintegrate into America, and then all these things, and then the stuff that was going on with Dodgy and Heartfulness and the YouTube channel taking off. So there's a lot. I was just focused on other things, but then I kind of realized, and I started to have health issues post COVID, and it just, I was seeing like death was coming. Right, I'm getting old. And I could see what happens as you get older, and just it's there in front of me, and whatever time it hits you, in your 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever it is, 70s, you see people like who are, maybe classmates in high school. If you're still in your same hometown, you see people your age, you're like, oh my God, they're so old, right? And I talked about how I looked at these people up for about a week or so. It just became important. I really didn't think about high school even when I was in it. I was not like, into it like people are. But, I was like, oh, wow, these people are all old. Some of them are dead. My siblings and things, people start dying off. And you realize, the people that you grew up with as famous people are all starting to die, right? People who are, who are the politicians and the famous people that were the people of your youth are all really old and dying, right? So you're like, your whole generation is falling off the cliff in a sense. They're just, there's the dwindling numbers. And, it's a good thing to think about, like not obsess about, but, you're like, all right, now what is it? Because when you're young, you have potential and you're becoming something. Your life and what you're going to do and what you're going to contribute, your career, who you're going to marry, your kids, that's all in front of you. You have these things and it's all, potential. And then as these things start completing, like my son moving out was the end of me raising kids, right? In terms of, whatever relationship is there. It's, that part where you're living all in the same house and they, when they leave the nest, it's a different situation. You might stay in their lives and it's, great if you do. And, they see them on a regular basis, but it's not the same. And, it's like an accomplishment. It's a milestone that's been completed. You have these tasks And as you eventually retire, and then what are you going to do, right? So what's your purpose then? If you don't have kids, or you don't have relationships with your kids, and you don't have grandkids, you don't have a job, you don't have anything, what do you do? Like, what do? You got hobbies? You're just going to get drunk. I see these, older people, and, they get drunk a lot. And, you see people who are retired to Florida. I lived in Florida for a while. And they hang out, and they talk about old people things, and, the generation that was. And my grandparents, was there, my parents when they were there. And you see these people, and, like, what do they play golf, but what do? Like, they don't have a purpose, and they just get really old really fast. And there's, my dad was terrified of death, like, no spiritual connection, and, like, what's life about now? Like, why do you get up every day, right? Like, my wife and I will be farming until, we die. Like, it's, like, with that, and I saw these old farmers, the Badgetts. You have a purpose, right? You're working on the farm, you're doing things, and you're contributing, to whatever environment, and animals and things eat some of your food or whatever it is. Or, well, we had peaches this year, and squirrels ate most of them. We have 2 peach trees, one that has amazing peaches that this squirrel just ate all the fucking things, or whatever. But, that has to be something we address. But, these things. And you have, your daily tasks that you have around the farm, which is good to have something like that. But then there's the spiritual thing, which is the most important thing. And that should be kicking in your 40s, 50s, 30s, certainly as you get older, because now you're transitioning to another place. Your body is no longer working as well. You've completed your assignments, as, whatever they are. And now you're focused on, your next incarnation, or your next wherever you're going after you die. And that should be something that you're connecting with on a regular basis. And the really only way to do that is through meditation. And, there's this general need for this. And the Sahaj Marg system is amazing because of the transmission and cleaning, the experiences you have, the connectivity that you have. I mean, it's something you can do on your own, but with the enhancement of the Sahaj Marg system, it's a wonderful system. And people start freaking out when they start thinking about death, and it helps alleviate those feelings, and you start, preparing for where you're going, right? Master Charge used to tell this great, like, analogies type story where there's this kingdom where the kings were all corrupt, so they would let one person in the kingdom become king for a year. But once they were done being king, they had to get out of the kingdom. And all the people who were kings, all these dudes, one after another, they just partied and indulged for a year. And then they were sent across this river to live on the other side of the river without being, banished from the kingdom. And this one guy decided to build a kingdom on the other side of the river. He spent his whole year doing that, and then he went to the other side of the river, and he was king again. And so that's an analogy for death, right? So, it's just something that, your soul is eternal, and you have to address your spiritual side. And people don't want to do that. They don't want to hear about it. And so, that's what I was talking about. It's kind of like a losing effort because, I can talk about it forever, and, and the people who, want to hear me mock stuff or whatever it is, and, the lowbrow kind of stuff or whatever. It's, I mean, even, for me, that I don't engage in, like, the binary system, the stuff people want to, people want to fucking indulge in their programming of right, left bullshit and Democrat, Republican bullshit and hating other people and blaming the other people and liberals, conservatives, and, all these fucking boxes they place you in that you don't even know you're just being fucking herded like cattle into these boxes, and people just don't want to fucking free themselves from these things. And, and they don't want to even think about something of a higher nature, even though, like, it's, sneaks up on you. I mean, as you get older and you realize, hey, I'm going to die, what's going to happen to me? And as your work and your things are, your accomplishments are done, there's a liberation of that stuff, but then how do you spend your time? And what do you focus on? And that's always, God and divinity. And, all the things that I do here on the YouTube channel and all the things that I cover and all the way that, I kind of, whatever effort I put into monitoring the audience, I know that the stuff that I talk about that has value, the most value, the spiritual stuff, it falls on deaf ears for the most part. And so, it's just, like I said, everything is like, is not expanding, it's contracting, right? And so, you know, it's just the way it is. And there's a great, the teaching I've talked about. You do the work and you leave the results to God. And you do your best. You do your work the best you can. But right now, there's a part that's other people. That people are running in the wrong fucking direction. And it gets worse with each generation. And, either it's going to stop or it's not. And, right now it looks like humanity is fucked, but, there always can be a wake-up call. There's example, St. Paul, for example, who was persecuting Christians and, a soldier who was killing religious, spiritual people. And he had this awakening, right? Saying he was, transformed into a spiritual person, someone who wasn't spiritual at all. And then he had this spiritual experience, and things like that can happen. It happened to me. And when I had my first 3 sittings, I had, no interest in God, no interest in meditation, no interest in these things. And that's why I'm not all bummed when people don't want to hear about it, because I didn't want to hear about it until I had the experiences that I did, and I was convinced. And so, but I tried it at least. I was, I resisted it when I was first told about it. I went to this therapist who was channeled, who was an MSW licensed therapist with also spiritual side who channeled. And my ex-girlfriend had gone to her. And then I went to her. She was a couple blocks from my house. And, I was really frustrated because therapy sucks. It can be helpful to some extent. I realized that I couldn't continue the life I was leading. But the new life I wanted to live I had no any idea how to create it. And I was just really frustrated. And I hadn't seen her for like 3 months, and I went back and had like a closing session. And her spirit guide said that I should meditate, and I had tried meditation before and didn't like it. So that answer pissed me off. And she gave me a piece of paper that had a picture of Chargy, like a poor Xerox copy that was hard to read. And it had stuff about it, and it had a number on it, which is the preceptor, my preceptor Fred. And I took the paper and threw it on my desk when I got home to my apartment and didn't look at it for 3 months, and I was annoyed. And then I felt some stuff in my heart. And then when I had looked at it, it said something about the heart, meditating on the heart. And I didn't think about the heart as the way people talk about the heart, that's not the physical organ. That person has a good heart, or that's a good-hearted person, or your heart feels. I just I didn't think about my heart at all. But then I felt something. I felt vibrations in it for a couple of days. So I picked up the piece of paper and went and got these, sittings, and it was transformative. But, so I understand resistance to such things. I was fortunate that what happened for me is, I was a low-functioning person who didn't have much interest in God and spirituality, but I was, chosen for it, and, I was destined for it, and it's panned out for me. And so, I talk about it here, but, as our society burns, and it's burning with stupidity. It's being fueled by stupidity and low consciousness and depravity and materialism and, all these things. It's just feeding the flames of our destruction. So, that's what I'm thinking about. All right, let's get into the other stuff here. Actually, I forgot a big chunk of this. I had these thoughts last night, and my physical body, my teeth thing, which, seems to have gotten both better and worse. It doesn't look like I'm going to lose my front tooth, at least not now, and doesn't look like it's infected. Could be still, but probably not. But, in general, I have bone loss, and I have gum issues, and maybe some sort of, whatever they call it, disease, gum disease or whatever it is, right? Which is causing more problems. And, there's a whole thing with that, which is the bacteria that's in your mouth or whatever, and whatever acidity that's going on there. And so I have to deal with that. but it's never going to be like my teeth are getting better or getting, younger, like my body. I didn't take much of an interest in my physical health until I had COVID. I've explained this before. My mom was kind of a hypochondriac, and I just didn't do much of anything. I started having to take supplements after COVID, and I was just wiped out, and I had to take an interest in my body, and my health has improved drastically. My energy level came back like it was kind of gone after COVID, and I just had something going on with me, which I think was more of a spiritual thing, and I feel like I've turned the corner on that. But as you get older, you're just trying to preserve what you had. You're trying to preserve what you have left. You're not turning back the clock in terms of, you're not having optimal health. You're not going back to your peak days. Like, you're fighting a losing battle because your body is, at the very least, it's wearing down, right? You're not able to do as what you used to do, and you have health issues on the horizon, and would eventually kill you. Ideally, for me, I would like to be active, and even as an old person, and die in the field. I mean, just have my heart give out or whatever it might be, right? Just or in my sleep or whatever, without having some prolonged old age, whatever that shit is. Like, it just what they did with my mom and dad, particularly my dad, where he was scared to die, and they give you all kinds of shitty drugs that cause all kinds of other problems, but they keep you alive until they can suck out all the resources you have left, and then they allow you to die. But you spend years where you can't do anything, like you're just physically broken, and they're just propping you up, and that's not living to me, whatever. But this is also what I'm talking about. You're fighting a losing battle, and you have to do it. It's not like it's a bad thing. It's just you know that you're going to die, and you want to preserve what you have, and you have to be more careful about your diet. You have to exercise. You have to live in a healthy manner. Stress is a big deal. Eliminate and alleviate as much stress and much of the negatives, and cultivate the positives. And the spiritual thing is a big part of it as well, right? Doing God's work and being functional. As long as you're working for God, then God is taking care of you, whatever that may be, in terms of the death process as well as your physical life. And so that's and not that you do it for that reason, but that's a bonus. And so these are all the things, right? That just you get to a certain age, and that's what's happening. Like, you're getting rid of all you're finalizing all of your obligations and all the work and all these things, right? You're just bringing closure, all these things. It's the end of your dharma, your duty, right? You're discharging your dharma, all the things that you had to accomplish. You're bringing resolution to those things, right? And so that's there's an appropriate way to leave this world. Anyway, so that was something I needed to add to this. Let's get into the other stuff here. Only spirituality will save this world. It's paramount. I'll definitely point from the Apocalaughs and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.